In this tutorial, I'll be going through how to complete your motion study project, basically from the point of having your finished motion sequence to touching things up after you've exported your drawings to Illustrator. So first of all, you can go ahead and open a new file in Rhino. Right off the bat, I like to change my units to inches. That'll just make things a little bit easier later on when you're printing from Illustrator. Yeah, you can go ahead and scale that. Alright. To start off, to import your photo into Rhino, use the picture frame command. You can select which photo you want to use. Mine is a backflip photo. And right away it'll prompt you for the first corner of your photo. You can just use the origin, doesn't really matter. And hold the shift key to make it align to the axes. Great. I know the rough size of this is going to be about, looks like 10 by 13 inches because each of those little boxes there is one unit. So now at this point you can start tracing out whatever parts of the drawing you decide to focus on. I'm going to keep my layers organized, just get rid of those. Call this one the image layer. And I'll just skim through this. Basically the only thing you need to remember at this point is to keep your layers super organized, and whenever you're drawing a new curve, make sure you're working in the layer you want to be working in. Alright, so I've basically finished up my drawing. There is one other handy command I wanted to show you. So if you wanted to split any part of the body into a bunch of pieces of equal length, let's say the back curve, basically the easiest way to do that is use the array curve command. So to start, put a point at the end of the curve. Figure out how many segments you want to break the curve into. I'll do 3 in this example. So click the point, use the array curve command, and go ahead and select the path you want to split. So basically this will put any number of evenly spaced points along that curve. So if I'm going to split the curve into 3 pieces, I'll need 4 points. Great. Next I'll want to use the split command. So basically select the thing you want to split, so the curve in our case, split, and select the points on the interior of the curve that you want to use to divide it. And now, as you'll be able to see, instead of one solid curve, there are 3 separate pieces, and that will carry over into Illustrator when you export. So it looks like at this point I'm pretty much ready to send my drawing to Illustrator. I'll make sure the image is turned off because we don't need that, and looks like we're ready to go. So just export, might want to rename it, and already set on Adobe Illustrator. Great. Here it gives you the option to scale it, but we already set up the size so we don't have to worry about it. You can just do 1:1. So as you can see, right after exporting, most of my drawing is off the artboard. So the first thing I want to do is resize. And center that. You might run into a glitch where when you first open Illustrator, none of your lines are showing up. Just try selecting all, and that should give you an idea of where everything is. Also, if you keep having problems with it, just zoom in, scroll so that none of the lines are on the screen, and then scroll back, and that usually fixes the problem. The only other glitch you might run into exporting is that when you go to change the color of something, so say I wanted to make this curve, red instead of green, when you go to a color palette, you won't see all the swatches like you normally would. To fix that, you can just hold down Shift when you click it, and you'll be able to manually adjust the color setting. You'll notice that right after exporting, all of the curves came in the color of the layer they were on in Rhino. So right off the bat, I'm going to select everything, make them black, and turn them down to 0.5 point. Perfect. At this point, you might want to start going through and editing layer by layer, especially because you'll have a lot more drawings than I do. So maybe you decide you want that back curve to be a little darker. You can manually go through and select all of them, but for the sake of time, I would recommend modifying layer by layer. So to select all the items on that layer, I'll just find it in my layers panel and click this little circle. So that'll select all of them, and I could go ahead and make that 0.7 points. Great. Maybe I also want to make that spine angle line dashed. So I'll select it. You could also do that down here. Go to the stroke panel, that dashed. Perfect. And maybe last, I decide that I want to shade in those arm and leg triangles. So you can actually select all the objects on multiple layers, just hold down Shift. So arm triangle, leg triangle, and we can give those a fill of, let's say, like a 20% gray. One thing you might notice is that as soon as I did that, it covered up parts of these hand circles. And that's because these layerings are basically arranged one in front of the other. The higher up the layer is in this layer panel, the further forward it will be on your screen. So if I wanted to make those hand circles fully show up, all I would have to do is drag this up above arm triangles and leg triangles, and you'll see those will pop out right away. Awesome. This is looking pretty good, but maybe I also decide that I'd like the line to be darker where my arm actually is, so I want this part of the line to be darker. But when I modify it, if I make this 3 points all of a sudden, it changes the whole thing. You could have set that up in Rhino initially by keeping those as separate curves, but if you forget to, you can also super easily do it in Illustrator. So select the object you want to split, and you can either hit C or you can click the scissors over in the panel. Either one works. And then select those anchor points, and basically the scissors divide an object wherever you click. So now I've divided that closed triangle into one angle and one line segment. So maybe I'll get rid of that fill for now just so you can see what I'm doing. And I guess I'll decide to make this line a little heavier. Let's make that 0.8. I'll do the same thing down here. Turn the fill off for now, and I'll cut out the part that's actually my leg and set that up to 0.8. Cool, so that looks good. But maybe I kind of liked it with the shading and I want to get that back. So your first instinct might be to just retrace over that triangle using the line tool. And you can see when I go ahead and try to do that, it thinks that I'm trying to create one whole shape and it connects it to the lines I already drew. To avoid that, you can manually lock certain objects. So basically select the objects you want to lock, and you can use Command 2, or to do it manually, you can go into Object, Lock, and Selection. On the other hand, you can lock layer by layer. So if I didn't want those to show up, I could go into my layers, lock arm triangles, lock leg triangles, and then I'll make a new layer that we'll call shading, and that will show up right on top of those. Maybe that should actually be underneath though. Okay, so now I can go through with the line tool, turn my line off, but I'll turn it to that 20% fill again. Okay, and the second one. Now, if you can remember back to when we split up that back curve, you can see instead of one segment, there are actually three different pieces here. So, maybe you decide you want to treat those differently. We can make this line a little bit lighter. That can be, 80% gray, and this one might be 60. Great. So now you might be looking and thinking you're pretty much finished up. So I'll go through the process for printing.